Your national radio. KBC English Service.
This is the Best of Breakfast with Angela Mwehaki. It's time for the big conversation. And you know that every Wednesday we round up the biggest political events of the week gone by. And it's never a dull moment, I tell you, in the Kenya political arena. Politicians are working out the numbers of newly registered voters to see if the figures favor them. Speaking of numbers, there's been a debate over a new opinion poll which has very interesting findings on the presidential race. Joining me to discuss all this and much more is George Kithi, advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a renowned political analyst both on radio and TV. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good. You're good?
I'm good, thanks.
So let's begin with the status of the voter registration exercise. After the initial extension of the mass voter registration till last Sunday, High Court Judge Enoch Ochacha ordered that the continuous registration go on until May 17th, exactly 60 days to the August 8th general elections. What then is the status of voter registration at the moment, and how different is this from the continuous? How is this different from the continuous registration, for mass voter registration?
Well, I think the way we structured our law, which I think it's members of parliament who put it, did not look at the implication. The implication is that if you put at calendar, then that calendar becomes a legal instrument upon which want of implementation, or if you don't implement it, then you breach the law. Then the other issue is that voter registration or admission into
into the register
as a voter cannot be capped this way. That you may turn 18 today, I may turn 18 tomorrow, I may turn 18 the other day,
right?
Which means that you cannot disenfranchise people in any way whatsoever, just because you have a budget and a calendar.
Okay.
Even if you put a calendar, that presupposes that some people will be disenfranchised because you need to plan yourself. That still is illegal because it means it locks out people from voting. Now, what is impractical is to have people who turn 18 a day before the day of election,
on the 7th,
getting admitted.
Okay.
That we can't do.
All right.
But we have to be as practical as possible to admit as many people as possible within the confines of law. This is what it means. It means that it is illegal to lock out people way before the day of voting. So eventually, therefore, the court created an environment of voter registration which is not, a ceremony.
Yes.
It is not a party. It is not where the president and the former prime minister, they go
as a guest.
Yes.
So it's an ongoing.
It must be ongoing, just like you can obtain an ID as an ongoing process. Voter registration must be an ongoing process until such a time when
the 17th of May.
Yes, you must be able to vote immediately before the election. The reason for that is that nobody in this world, nobody, even Trump, can disenfranchise you.
So it is only to ensure that the process, that even those who will be 18 in time.
You cannot rest to get to 18. You can't help
No,
it.
You can't help it. The
But
day
when you
will
turn
come.
18, the right sets in.
Right.
And if there's time, you must be admitted just like any other citizen. The right to vote catches up with you. You get admitted into that right immediately to turn 18. So you can't, it's not your fault. You didn't choose when to be born.
Absolutely.
So you can't therefore tell people that we are stopping here. Now you who turn 18, wait for 5 years. You can't tell people that.
Now, the IBC chairperson, Wafula Chebukati, says that these court rulings have massive implications on the commission's budget, and this is what he has to say.
Budget yetu imeharibika kwa sababu kila siku kulingana na ile mass voter registration tunatumia karibu 30 to 40 million shillings per day kufanya hiyo operation.
So now, with this extension until 17th of May, will they be able to really kujipanga vizuri as required?
Chebukati should be in his law firm as we speak. He took the job, so he should know what he was getting into. He should have known. But who said democracy is cheap? It has never been cheap. Securing people's rights, including security to yourself and myself, including education and health. That's why we have the health crisis. any other right that is guaranteed in the constitution that is supposed to be given or granted to the people as a guarantee, it will never be cheap. You must then import weapons and aeroplanes. We don't know, but we are saying we must be safe. All right, this is one of them, that we must be safe from disenfranchisement. So you must never be disenfranchised. They should have planned and budgeted so that we have a free and fair election where everybody who is 18 years is voting. So 40 million is very little.
So could we say maybe now, because it's not such a mass thing, it could be left to constituency offices for people to normally go and register like they do?
How they do it,
we don't care.
Yes, we shouldn't. All we are saying is anybody who has a birthday party today, tomorrow, he should have his voter registration card. Oh. That's the point. So whether it is 40 million or 3 million, it is how then, this is a new environment which they are in. They should be able to reorient their resources, including cutting their salaries, so that people are registered as voters. Point is, I think there should be sacrifices so that people are not disenfranchised. Okay. And that's the pain of democracy.
Now, let us see. The figures released by the IBC yesterday show that 3.7 new voters were registered against the target of 6.1 million. By the end of the cleanup to remove duplication, I'm sure we will have much less.
Yes.
So what do you make of this 1 million voters?
Let me tell you, we wouldn't have this debate if IBC didn't give us a target. Huh?
So they should not have told us the 6 to 9 million.
Why did they give us a target? They should have us gone. The registration bureau doesn't say we will register 85,000 Kenyans and give them new IDs. They can't say that.
It's an ongoing.
Yes, because it is voluntary. You do not go and set target for yourself. Now they have, and we are holding their performance to that target which they put it. They should have just shut up. Sometimes it's merely clever to keep quiet because then you can't control the outcome. That's what they did. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debate. So they failed, in short. Based on their own target, they failed. Short, yeah. And we're expecting more failures because if this is the standard they're setting early in the day.
Ouch.
Point is, I think registration is not compulsory.
No, right? It's not.
So they shouldn't tell us they're going to register 6 million people. In other countries, yes, it is criminal not to register as a voter.
But we haven't gotten there yet.
Yes, we will criminalize it one day. But for the time being, let's see this tighten of number thing. But I think what is important to note is Kenyans are delusioned with the politics of the day. Kenyans are busy competing with lifestyles that they can't hold because the economy is bad. You, instead of going to work, you're going for voter registration. I mean, it doesn't work like that.
No,
and in fact, the judge should have gone to say they should do door-to-door voter registration, or in the alternative, every Saturday and Sunday they're working because that's the only time
people will be home here because door-to-door weekdays tuko kazini, including
public holiday. At the time we go to Shags to register from there. And by the way, they should have made it much easier so that if you're in Nairobi, you can take your card from here and vote in Murang'a. You don't have to travel to your station. So it's easy for Chebukati to reorient himself so that then he learns how to fly without patching.
Now, one of the other statistics really revealed yesterday was that there have been over 1 million voters who applied to transfer their voting stations. Could that be some of the stories we're hearing? People are being shipped and moved. What does that imply?
You see, it's about numbers, especially mashinani. You see, if you're running for president, you can't move people, unless, of course, you move them from Uganda. And
true.
But the point is, what happens in this competition, we demarcated the country into certain fiefdoms, which ought to be administratively convenient. But the point remains that some communities fall into other communities.
They fall in different areas, yes.
Other communities are probably majority in certain counties, constituent sub-counties, and all that. What happens is then there's a lot of importation. You go and tell people to move to my side, presumably because those will be your supporters. That at that level, yes, it is first an offense and it is criminalized. But secondly is that people again must exercise the freedom as to where to vote. For instance, many people after they graduate do not go to the village, they work in Nairobi.
True.
So if the graduates of that year are 1 million all over our universities, and they want to stay in Nairobi,
they will move to Nairobi.
They then will have
absolutely
to transfer. And others will leave Nairobi to go to the counties to look for jobs because these days we have jobs in the counties.
Yeah.
So yes, it's nothing illegal.
So
however, the investigation should be to detect anything untoward in terms of an abrogation of the law.
Okay, now, political scientist Mutahi Ngunyi has an interesting analogy on what these low figures, in terms of registration, mean for both Jubilee and NASA. And we got this off his YouTube channel, The Fifth Estate.
According to the latest IEBC figures, Jubilee gained an extra 888,000 voters, while NASA gained an extra 814,000 voters through registration. But if you subtract 800 from 800, the answer is 0. And this is why we are saying that voter registration achieved 0. Put differently, Uhuru did not win over voter registration. What actually happened is that NASA lost. And this is why I must give them unsolicited advice over this election. What they lost in registration, they must gain in voter turnout.
So do you agree with Mutahi Ngunyi that the voter registration exercise has not made any significant difference, between Jubilee, and that NASA will now have to rely on vast voter turnout?
I don't know how Mutahi looks at things. Sometimes I agree with him, sometimes he's confusing. And I'm not criticizing him, but what I'm trying to say is voter registration is not supposed to be a support for NASA or Jubilee. Seriously. What I know in law and the Constitution, voter registration is supposed to put people into the bracket of voter. It's supposed to bring people, to give people their right, constitutional guaranteed right. It to enhance democracy, is to enhance an environment where people can contract with their leaders. That is who will rule us and how you will rule us. That's it. As to whether Code wins, whether Raila wins or Uhuru wins, I think that's...
Yeah, because it's just people turning up to register.
I think he wants... That's honestly is not... Okay, fine. It makes political sense in terms of being a political commentator. But the intention was to... Those that have not taken a voter... have not registered as voters should register as voters because that's their constitutional right, and that's why we are going to have them registered until a certain point,
until the 17th of May.
That is true. So he should have looked at it that way. But if I have to follow his narrative, this is the position that I think it is reading too much to say NASA didn't gain. It is reading too much to say Jubilee didn't gain, because we haven't even started convincing those that were registering themselves. All right? So he's using regions. But you see, in Nairobi, for instance, there are many tribes that are here. True. He's looking at the tribe inclination. He doesn't know. He hasn't looked at, not to say this is an Onyango, this is a Kamau who registered. He's just looking at regions. We haven't even started convincing, the politicians have not even started convincing those that registered to vote for them. So there's no conversion.
Or to nominate them already for
so
the
those
party.
voter cards, those voter people who registered have not been converted into voters yet in terms of political inclination. That's the presumption we make, because that's why we have a period of time when we will convince people in campaigns.
And of course with us is George Kithi, advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a regular TV and radio analyst on political matters. And we're looking at some of the bigger stories that have caught our attention during the week. Now, in our local dailies today, they were talking about registration of prisoners has begun as of yesterday. And the interesting aspect is there is Joshua Waiganjo, who was accused of impersonating a policeman, has declared that he wants to vie for a parliamentary seat despite being a prisoner. Is that possible?
No. Once you are in prison, you are disenfranchised from taking up a public position, including a political position. Reason is you can't execute that mandate. There are certain exclusions to the right to hold that position. One of it is when you've been convicted. Just like when you lose your parliamentary seat, when a person is convicted for over 6 months for an offense, where he's sentenced for a period of over 6 months or similar punishment.
Or found bankrupt.
Yes, or bankrupt. So there are exclusions. He's in illusion. I think that thing he used to do, being a police officer but not a police officer, is still illusioning him. His rights are limited by law, and therefore free advice, he cannot vie for
That's
that
how
position.
your story.
That's true.
Okay, now, a new poll released by Ipsos Synovate day before yesterday shows that the President Uhuru Kenyatta is the most popular presidential candidate. Poll says if elections were to be held now, President would garner 47% compared to Raila's 30%. Here is the Ipsos lead researcher Tom Wolfe with that finding.
Slightly under half mentioned the current president, Uhuru Kenyatta. Slightly under 1/3 mentioned the former prime minister and CORD NASA co-principal Raila Odinga. And the rest were spread out over the others.
So according to this poll, Wiper leader Kalonzo and ANC's Musalia enjoyed only 6 and 3 popularity amongst those sampled. So Jubilee's purportedly the most popular party at 45%, and CORD and NASA combined only at 34%. What's your response to these results?
Well, one is popularity. It's very interesting because popularity is a question of who is in people's minds most as at the time.
Yes.
Well, don't forget that there's advantage of incumbency. If you've been president, then you've been in public affairs throughout the 5 years.
Yeah.
Secondly is that you affect people's lives almost immediately and on daily basis, even as at the time that the poll is taken. And thirdly, again, we have seen what polls do to Hillary. What it did to Hillary and why she rode on polls and where she is now. Well, we don't know where she is in a sense, but what we're trying to say is it is indicative of the fact that many Kenyans may not have made a decision
yet
as to what to do or who to vote for, and in fact there may be the highest voter apathy in this election for 2 reasons. That the middle class may be disillusioned as to the current affairs in terms of the economy, which has slowed down tremendously. Households are struggling.
Yes.
And public affairs is conducted in a disheveled manner, at least according to the consumers such as me. However, the alternative that will replace the government is also not credible enough so as to give sympathy, to attract sympathy, or alternatively to be able to shift probably the support base from the ruling coalition or the government as to NASA or whoever would be presidential candidate. I've always advised Kalonzo Musyoka that he's going nowhere. That figure is not going to change, and he's not going to be the president of this country. Let me just tell him for free. The reason is he has no support base, and he has never fared beyond 20% at any given time anyway. So if he's going to stand, let him stand to market himself. But I have a word of advice for Kalonzo, for instance, that if he's going to stand as and playing second fiddle, we will always look at him as a man who is never himself, as a fence sitter. So he should stand so that in 2022 it is going to be free for all. For instance, there'll be Ruto, who we think he's going to vie.
Yes.
There'll be Kalonzo Musyoka, because he'll have advertised himself. There's also Peter Kenneth, who is vying for a gubernatorial seat. If he loses, let him forget 2022, because we'll know he's a loser. In this country, if you want to vie for an election, you don't just come and vie because you're not an Obama and get it. What happens is this: you must continue to market yourself, because that's what
stay visual,
and you lose sometimes.
Yes.
You don't lose because you've lost, because you've marketed yourself, and then you will be in the Kenyan mind and psyche that you're a possible alternative. We have had Mwai Kibaki, who has vied over time until he got it.
Finally,
quite stubbornly,
yes.
But eventually he made it for 10 years.
So
and he did a
persistence.
good job for this country.
Right.
So you have to be persistent. If Kalonzo Musyoka is going to be persistent as a running mate, he can continue to do that. He will never get it.
Now, of course, if we look at the figures given by this poll, it looks, with Jubilee at 47 and Raila at 30, none of them are at that 50 plus 1%. So do you think this may lead to a runoff?
Most likely.
So we can see that.
Most likely it's going to be a runoff, which is very interesting, because then we'll only have 2 people and many Kenyans to make a decision.
So that should be interesting for us.
Yes.
Now, however, Tom Wolf is quick to note that these numbers may change, considering that NASA at that point had not named its flag bearer. So I'm wondering, would this bring another change, in terms of maybe 49 for the respondents want former Raila to fly NASA's flag? Or could this perhaps be, if this naming of a candidate make it better, improve the ratings for NASA?
That Wolf is right. That poll was taken at a point when NASA is still grappling with who to put. Most likely to be Raila Odinga, but if he is in, the dynamics may change. We've tested once Raila's support on Mwai Kibaki,
yes,
and what he could do, but then he was more youthful than he is now. He keeps on saying he has 1 bullet left. I don't know what that means, but probably it means he has 1 term to go, probably as a political campaign strategy. But the point is, if he stands, he's a formidable force, but we will be doing the same thing as we've done before, and the result is known as at that time and has been consistently known. But I think what we'll get into as a surprise is when he supports someone else. Probably then they'll be doing something different,
something
and therefore
new.
the result may be different. I know that'll be a big scare to the incumbency if someone else other than Raila Odinga stands. Remember, every strategy right now as to how Jubilee will win the election is focused on Raila,
on one particular candidate. Now, if it turns out that the highest level of undecided votes are in Western Kenya, and this is Tom Wolf again.
Another thing which I find interesting here is that the plurality, that is the highest proportion of our respondents by region who are undecided, are in Western. Why is that? Why is it that nearly 1 in 5 of our respondents in Western haven't made up their minds? Actually, and support none is another 20%. So it's really 4 out of 10 people in Western are not aligned with any political party or coalition.
So the biggest luminaries from Western Kenya, of course, are Moses Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi, and they're battling for the same side, well, at least for now. So then why is it, according to this poll, 1 in every 4 is undecided on where to go?
I think the Wolf is trying to say this, that there are presidential contestants who are yet to be nominated in NASA. For instance, some may want to go for Musalia, some is Wetangula, and yet there's Raila Odinga. So when then a decision is made as to who to support, then we will know, because there are those supporters who are still grappling as to, they're not sure whether Musalia Mudavadi will get it. Of course, Wetangula won't get it, but they're not sure, because in politics you must hope. So they are waiting to see. There are those that will be disgruntled if their support, if the person they support is not the presidential flag bearer, so they either refrain from voting, or in the alternative, they vote for the government, or in the alternative, they refrain from voting completely, because you know what? As I've said, and I repeat it, voter apathy in this country is
quite
probably
high.
At its highest.
Now, as the election approaches, massive voter fury is being reported in central Kenya, where 60% of voters sampled in a poll said they did not expect their MPs to be re-elected. Interesting though, MPs from NASA-leaning areas can afford a small sigh of relief, because at least 39% of those polled said they did not wish to re-elect their current MPs. What do you attribute this voter fury in such areas as central? And in the same breath, why are temperatures a little cooler in the NASA areas?
I think NASA areas are beholden to chieftainship this way, that if Raila supports you, for instance, in Nyanza and in areas that ODM has high support or court or NASA, then probably you will get them elected. This is the same in also Ukambani, for instance, Eastern, and other areas where they have their own tribal chiefs. In Central, we have a tribal chief, but in the presidency, so he has no complete and total control of who he represents or who he supports, which is good enough politically not to support someone, because he needs all the votes and he doesn't have to disfranchise people and therefore lose support. But that way then it means there'll be commotion, and therefore people are available to go against each other. But again, in terms of the expectations from the region, where the presidency seems to belong to them more closely than any other region, then probably the expectation in terms of development and security of their interests was highest. That way then the benchmark as against the level of services was probably higher for the incumbents in that area, from governors all the way to MCAs.
So there were high expectations.
There were high expectations.
Right.
It's also very highly populated, so we see more political competition in that area. People started, if you look at the jamlex of this one, campaigns started almost immediately. If you look at YT2, for instance, and Kabogo, there has been campaign and court cases and all stuff from the beginning. So we probably will see more alternatives being paraded as against the incumbents in that area.
Actually, yeah, you're absolutely right, because I'm just looking at MCAs. I think we already have about 10 where I come from who we did not even know. And of course, if you're just joining us, we have with us George Kithi, advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a regular legal and political analyst on The Breakfast Show. And we are taking a look at some of the hottest stories or debates that have caught our attention since Wednesday last week. Now, one of the hottest debates in the last few days has been the proposal by a section of Jubilee leaders to have IEBC conduct the upcoming party's primaries. Here are the views of House Majority Leader Aden Duale, Head of Jubilee Secretariat Raphael Tuju, and IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati.
Hatutaki ukora ya nomination. Na katiba ya Kenya inasema IEBC has a role to conduct party primaries.
How can they be arbitrators and at the same time be the ones who help us conduct it?
Of course, our first wish is that I wish political parties would hold primaries without involving us. But capacity we have. But we are talking about logistics. And we're also talking about our timelines towards the August 8th general election. We have a lot of things on our table. It's more of the workload which we have.
So NASA has already threatened to seek legal redress should IEBC agree to conduct Jubilee nominations. Should the IEBC, which is already struggling, we can hear from Chebukati, to prepare for the general elections, be given the additional responsibility of conducting political party primaries?
The law allows IEBC to conduct primaries, not only in political parties forums, but also any other body. LSK has used them and other bodies have used them, but that's off calendar, election calendar. Now, election calendar, I think IBC is literally idle.
Yes.
So they should have done that a long time ago. They're doing it now. But look, we have calendars that we have to respect in law. Point is, if IEBC, being a lawyer, if IEBC messes up anybody who comes to me, I'll sue them. And then they start fighting cases now.
If they mess up anybody in what way?
Yes, in the primaries.
Okay.
All right? They have to do justice to everyone, which is an impossibility because everybody will want to have the ticket. Those that don't, they won't even know the shenanigans in the political party. So if they get involved, they're soiling themselves much earlier. And we will go to court to sue them for those who come to complain. And then they start battling with court cases much earlier before they even come to the real issue. Because even there, we will sue them very many times and in multiple ways. So what we are trying to tell them is if they can avoid it,
stay off.
Which they should. They should keep off the mess in political parties. You know what? ODM has no democracy. We've seen what they could do. Jubilee has its own mess. Every political party has its own mess of sorts. The political competition that should be left to the politicians and not get involved. It's very, there's a lot of insanity in that process. So if they get involved, they should, but they should know what they're getting themselves into. We'll clog them with cases from the beginning until the time when they get into that big petition in the presidential election, which we will see on TV. They'll be tired. They'll have resources depleted. They'll be worn out. And I don't think psychologically and even as matters stand, they can get involved. They don't have that luxury to get involved in such primaries.
Okay, now let's take a detour and move into matters education. And there are shockwaves after an audit by the Commission for University Education revealed that universities have been awarding dubious degrees. Now listen to these remarks by Education CS Fred Matiang'i, who was at the function.
Of course, we cannot tolerate, and we are not going back, and we will never go back on the issue of ensuring that our universities are providing quality education. Where people have been awarded degrees that they do not deserve, it is going to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and it will be reviewed in that kind of manner. The law has got to be followed. We will not have institutions that give degrees to people who do not qualify to get those degrees, and we are going to follow the law to the letter in doing this. But the right thing must be done. The right thing, which is we ensure that people are awarded degrees when they deserve to be awarded degrees. We are diluting the quality of our education and interfering with the image of our university education, and this does not just affect those who are being awarded degrees, it affects everyone in Kenya.
So are we surprised really by the findings of the audit? I mean, the quality of degrees churned out by universities has been a subject for debate for quite a while.
We're not surprised. Well, there's a lot of commercialization in our universities of the products that come out. I think, yes, and everybody should talk like that. Every leader should talk like that.
Own up.
Follow the law, say the truth, and you know what, execute. There's nothing, because Matiang'i is not doing anything magical. Honestly, it's pointing out the social ills. In a sector, looks like this is all of... I mean, what will you feel if you went to be operated by a doctor who is not qualified? Seriously, he'll kill you. If you went to, an institution that is technical, Look, we've taken a car for repairs. The person is not He's a
qualified,
Juakali.
yeah.
Yet he calls himself an engineer. Then he messes you up. There's so much loss into mediocrity than even corruption. I think it's a bigger problem we have. Look, we are not short of human resource in this country. We have so many degrees in this country that so that we can function. We don't need that mediocrity. But you know where it started? I think it started with our politicians, who were racing to get degrees because they want to be governors, because there's a threat that they'll be locked out. And therefore, as we speak, many of them have acquired degrees in dubious ways. However,
I think it started earlier. We
look,
haven't had
this is the hate of it.
Half-baked.
This is the hate of it. How it started earlier on, and this is probably historical, is that some people, those old days, when you finish your class 8 certificate and you move on to Form 4, you give your class 8 certificate to a neighbor, so that then he moves on also. When you get to Form 4, yes, when you move to Form 4,
I didn't know that.
and you get the Form 6 certificate, you leave your Form 4 certificate to someone else. And when you get to Form 6, then you go to the university, you leave your Form 6 certificate to someone else. Those are our leaders today, actually at the level of Matiang'i, but I don't think Matiang'i did that.
Wow.
So the point is this, that the road started much earlier. He should have been arrested. However, it's not too late for this country. Okay, nothing is late in this country. It's not too late to try and change. And I think Matiang'i is doing a good
It's
job.
a good start.
He's the only now standing Michuki that we have. Others, well, we know what they are doing. In the slumber mode, waiting for the government to come in and then they are appointed afresh. But let's support Matiang'i. Let's support the mood he's creating for the country of responsibility. At least whether it will happen or not, let's know where the problem is.
There's a change, yeah.
Some of us who are employers then know what to look for. At least we are classifying the people. So let's look at the high school results and see if you could have been admitted to a degree level. I mean, it's simple. If you don't deserve, you don't deserve. I mean, it's good to get that which you deserve.
You know, just saying it off the cuff, I was sharing earlier on my experience yesterday. I bought 6 mangoes for 15 shillings and I gave the young man 100 bob. He could not calculate the cost.
That's the point.
He said, aliniambia, unajua sina calculator sasa, no, just simple math, 15 plus 15, izo 5 ni mob. So this problem could be serious. After that, I had some of my listeners call in and say, if you give a graduate and tell them to point for you the Amazon map, the Amazon River, they do not know where it is on the map.
That's the point. So
I think this problem is huge.
Well, we do know that there's a clamor much more for papers so that people get employed. And they get employed, by the way. I mean, in the counties, they're there. In our government, they're there because they know so and so. I don't think that's right. That's fair. And let's just stick to the law. Like Matiang'i is saying, let's stick to the truth.
Now, talking about the law, Matiang'i, of course, has said that what he's going to do is those who are admitted without meeting the minimum requirements will have their papers withdrawn. So then now, what happens to issues like parallel programs where, they don't go through bridging? Now, if these papers are withdrawn legally, can I not be taken to court if the university, can I not sue them for revoking my degree?
Those judges are graduates. They won't support you, let me tell you. Because and you cannot get you see, the law can't support an illegality. If you in the first place, if at inception it was an illegality, but there's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is there are some degrees that we can't revoke. Okay. For instance, that those that leave to go to India with the same marks of the same people here we are vilifying. Okay, now when they come back here, they'll have degrees. Some go to Australia, I hear some go to Zanzibar. Some even come from Oman with degrees. Okay, what do you do with those? What is a degree? I mean, that's probably the germane question. For instance, I can have a degree in Islamic law from Oman. I can have a degree in nutrition from a country whose standards are low. When I come here, I will have a degree. So the issue is recognition of the degree, not necessarily revocation. Because I have a right to own my papers. If I got them, I got them. But the point is that degree should not be recognized because of the environment we have and the legal dispensation that's guiding what is recognized as a degree. But if I want to go and study religion and I'm a bishop and I have a degree from elsewhere, that really is my problem. When I come back with the papers here, then it should not be recognized.
Now, still on universities, the striking lecturers have rejected the government's latest offer of 10 billion shillings, which WASU organizing secretary Maloba Wekesa says is a paltry sum compared to their demands.
We have actually come to the presence of Parliament so that we can be able to give them a petition to show our disgust first that they are not listening to us and they have not listened to us now for the past 5 years. We have been trying to get audience with the government so that we can be able to negotiate a CBA. They have not come to the table. And when they did, just around last week, they gave us a paltry sum. What they did was to give us a sum that did not address what our proposal had actually wanted.
Now, of course, 10 billion, I mean, to any Kenyan does not sound like a paltry sum. So when the union accuses the government of trying to cut corners, I mean, really, why do they believe this is a drop in the ocean?
Truth is, yes, cumulatively, it's a lot. And that's what the government uses so that it markets itself as having done something substantial. But if you trickle down to the individual effect, it may be very little. Okay. However, ever read the book where let me put it this way, where it says an A student is ruled by the C student.
The C student is the boss, yes, who hires
the E
them.
Student.
Mm-hmm.
The lecturers are paid in some areas, in some universities, less than an MCA. You know what? That MCA.
Most of them are paid less than an MCA.
And those are professors.
Yes.
This will never change. This narrative is not going to change in this country.
So this is the animal farm where some animals will always be more equal than others.
That is true. That is true. So for as long as you pursue education, do it for passion. For as long as you pursue your career, do it for passion. If you want to make money,
become a politician.
Become a politician, or in the alternative, do your own business where you have your own controls. Otherwise, if it's employment, you will have to play by the rules of the world, not by Kenyans. Point is, welfare has to be looked at. There are laws and the environments. Look, there is a formula against which production of a certain sector can be made. You don't just wake up and say we want 10 billion. The sector must be measured as to its productivity in the country. For instance, a doctor and a lecturer, there'll be a debate as who is more productive.
Who's more important?
By the way, there are statistics as to who is more productive. Number two, if you increase arbitrarily salaries in this country of a sector, you may lead to inflation. You may, for instance, compromise security. You may compromise so many things. So it's all a balancing act. That money is not money that's allocated to government from anybody else. It's from us. So eventually, everybody must behave like a Kenyan. They must demand their rights, but within the confines of limitations.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we wrap up the conversation, once again, Kenyans are witnessing a clash of different arms of government, this time between judiciary and the legislature. A number of politicians in recent days have expressed dissatisfaction over several court rulings, such as the one that compelled the IBC to extend voter registration, and the High Court nullifying the IBC ballot paper procurement. Here is what Kenny MP Kanini Kega says about this.
After this general election, we are going to think critically on the role of the judiciary, and if we feel that they have more powers, we will call upon Kenyans to go for a referendum so that we can trim some of the powers that they are trying to usurp in the name of trying to interpret the constitution. Whatever decisions that they are making, they should know that there are other arms of government who should also be consulted. For example, Parliament. Parliament, we appropriate funds to all these relevant agencies.
So really, do you think the judiciary is trying to usurp the powers, or maybe the MPs do not understand?
This gentleman, only that's hogwash. I'm sorry to use that language, but it's silly to say that you will be consulted for the judiciary to interpret the laws. You know what the judiciary does? It doesn't make laws. To be honest,
it upholds.
The law is brought to him, just like you'll sit and tea is brought to you. Then you are told, here is the dispute. I'm a Kenyan. You stand as a judge. You stand between me and those that rule us. Remember, when they're campaigning, they're telling Kenyans, we will rule you by the law. Which law? The law that one is the constitution and the rule that they make. So they make laws. The laws are taken before the court. That's what they should know. The moment Parliament makes laws, that law is taken to Parliament, to the court. It's for purpose of enforcement, nothing else. The courts then look at the law and interpret it. What then is the spirit of the constitution vis-a-vis this law? If they go there without degrees and therefore they're illiterate, they will make the same laws which then they feel are biting them.
Okay, now, really, do they have a chance? Can Parliament do what he's claiming to do? You know, what it has done to rebuild?
It is impossible. In fact...
So, like the last time they tried to slash, let me say, can they misbehave? Slash, they did that in the last one.
We will go to court, and the same court will reallocate itself. It will reverse what they have done. You know what? They can't just do illegalities. Who do they think they are? Point is, it is always a pleasure And I'm telling every Kenyan now, it should be a pleasure if the judiciary reverses what these guys have done, because the judiciary is a watchdog. Every time the judiciary does something in favor of Mwananchi, it's again to Mwananchi. So you should never be convinced, the MP, that if the court decides in reversal of a decision they've made, including passing of certain legislation, they should clap for the judiciary, because that's what the judiciary is supposed to do. They make laws, we have to reverse them or interpret them in favor of the Constitution and the people of Kenya.
Right. So thank you very much. Time is, well, at least we've managed to cover as much as we possibly could. What do you think are the bubbling understories for next week? What can we expect to see?
Well, Kenya can never be boring, let me tell you.
True that.
It will never be boring. So let's see. Corruption has been put on the side.
Yeah, how quickly we forget.
Yes, it has. But you know what? I heard that Kidero's NGO, the license was revoked. So I think we'll see higher decibels. Well, Joe is out of the country when he comes back.
Yes, with the photos of him flashing and flaunting in the
Yes,
States,
but when he comes
with
back,
the escalades and everything else.
Yeah,
Is it true he went to look for legal representation?
No. I think he went to confirm that he's not under any
He's not the name.
Like
okay.
The point is, if he comes, he'll abuse the president. Then we will start off again afresh. Then we'll see Marwa at work. Then we will see Duale at work. But I think the next thing is, I think the proper debate that we should have is the state of the economy. That's very important.
Because that is crucial now.
Yes, it's crucial for Kenyans.
Yes.
And of course, we need to see IBC rolling out, and also more of, this thing called, this thing against hate speech. This organization.
NCIC.
Have you ever heard of it? And yet this silent. Is the time it should be warning,
right,
and be heard, because we are getting into the advent of abuses and insults. And,
they have begun, Chinyamaji.
No. I think you can't do that, Chinyamaji.
No, I'm saying quietly zimeanza.
Yes, that's true. So deterrence is very important. They should be able to explain the public and to be vigilant in order to report any hate speeches, because it is important that as Kenyans we stay together towards the election and after the election.
That was the Best of Breakfast with me, Angela Mwehaki. Remember to follow us on Facebook at KBC English Service. On YouTube, look for the KBC English Service channel. And on Twitter, we're at KBC English Service, and I'm at Angela Mwehaki.
KBC English Service.